Professor Beshaki.
Thank you, Dr. Shiva. With immense respect and gratitude, I'm pleased to take this privilege to welcome our esteemed speaker of the session, Dr. Amrit Lal Bharadwaj. Dr. Bharadwaj practiced as an accountant cum auditor for over 25 years before entering academia in 2004. His specialist area has been SMEs and has overseen several businesses from initial startup to successful exit. He has been teaching at Cardiff Business School, UK for the last 12 years, teaching a range of audiences from foundation level students through to executive MBA postgraduates. He teaches accounting to final year BSc Business Management undergraduates studying entrepreneurship. He has also been a visiting lecturer to Jane, deemed to be university for past few years, barring the last two on account of the COVID pandemic. He was awarded a 3-year 2019 to 2021 Wellen Scholarship to teach at Zhongnan University of Economics and Law, Wuhan, China. He is also a guest mentor at the Alacrity Foundation, teaching accountancy and finance to budding tech entrepreneurs. And I feel immensely pleased to invite him for delivering his talk. Over to you, Amritji.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I asked that because I had a flash message, a message flashed across my screen to say that my internet connection was a bit unstable. So if you lose me, don't panic. I'll try and reconnect as soon as possible. Listening to Gary, my session is the next natural carry-on connection, if you like, because I'm going to talk about one of the many aspects that he mentioned. The one thing that he mentioned was that new startups fail within the first 3 years of starting up, and he mentioned the figures 70% and 90%. So, so let's make a start. Bear with me. I'm just going to get my. I'm going to share my screen with you. Not share my screen with you. Just going to get my Word. Here we go. Okay, let's start. Firstly, a very warm namaskar to all of you. The gist of my talk is going to be about how a banker or a business angel is going to evaluate a business plan. Now, for the sake of the budding audiences, budding entrepreneurs in the audience, I want to assure them that this talk is not about discouraging you in any way in your proposed endeavors, but simply to point out the pitfalls that you will come across and need to avoid on your entrepreneurship journey. Now, the first part of my talk, I will give reasons and explanations as to why 70 to 80% of new businesses ventures fail within the first 2 to 3 years of starting up. Gary mentioned the figure of as high as 90. This varies from country to country, but nevertheless, it's a fact that a very, very high percentage of new startups fail. Now, if I say 70 to 80% of new businesses fail, I could rephrase that and say you only have a 20 to 30% chance of success, which can be quite frightening and quite discouraging. So the second part of my talk, I will show you what cash flow forecasts and projected accounts ought to demonstrate as a bare minimum to convince or persuade a lender, an angel or a bank, that the proposed business venture is a commercially viable one and worth lending to. I will conclude by some observations about the current COVID pandemic and followed by questions and answers. May I suggest that you save your questions till I've finished the presentation, as chances are that I will have answered most of them during the course of my talk. Right, let's start considering some extracts from a very well-researched ACCA technical article entitled Business Failure, Prediction and Prevention by one Michael Pogue, who is an examiner. Now, what he's done in this article is he's summarized various sources that have been published on the subject of business failure since the early 1970s. And therefore, what I'm about to tell you is grounded in solid empirical evidence. So why do so many new startups fail? Let's consider some of the symptoms of business failure. There are many lists, and the UK insolvency website lists 65 reasons. Inter alia amongst them are, now let's go through the list slowly. Failure to focus on a specific market. Why? Because your market research for your product or service was very poor. Your failure to control costs ruthlessly, careless spending. Lack of skills in the management team in the core areas of finance, legal and marketing, also referred to as lack of management in depth. Then there's creative accounting, which is plainly fraudulent. Then you have accounting deficiencies in that there is no budgetary control, no cash flow plans, no costing systems. However, the ultimate reason for business failure is poor leadership. Now, I'm not going to talk to you about leadership today. That's a separate topic in itself. However, I'll try and give you the gist of what good leadership is. Leadership is the most important single factor in determining business success or failure in a competitive, turbulent, fast-moving economy. And that's what's said by Brian Tracy, a business guru, who's a very elderly gentleman who's been around many, many years. You can YouTube it. YouTube his lectures, absolutely brilliant. Written a lot of books which have been translated into many languages. So Brian Tracy is worth looking up. Now, business leadership is about taking financial responsibility, conducting sound financial and research, and understanding the unique financial dynamics of one's business. That is, you must know the dynamics of your particular venture. What will make it tick? Leadership is also about taking initiative, taking action, getting things done, and making decisions. And if you're not doing anything of significance to market and promote your business, you are heading for business failure. You must know the competition. Leadership is about providing value to your customers. If your main competitors are providing a better quality product for a lower price, how can you possibly create any value? So either you harness your strengths to provide different benefits, such as speed, convenience, or a better service, lower your price and improve quality, create a different product for an unmet demand, or simply get out of the marketplace. Right, let's also consider a study by an American bank which enlists the main reasons for business failure. Firstly, poor business planning, poor financial planning, poor marketing, poor management. Now, I'd like to throw some numbers at you now. According to this study, in the business planning category, 78% of businesses failed. 78% is almost 80%. Failed due to the lack of a well-developed plan. And as they say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. In the financial planning category, 82% of the businesses failed. due to poor cash flow management skills. And this is why I'm going to be showing you cash flow forecasts and projected accounts shortly. So 82% of businesses fail due to poor cash flow management skills, followed closely by starting out with too little money. The business was undercapitalized. This is what Gary mentioned as well, at least twice or thrice in his speech, in his lecture. Half of UK's small businesses fail within the first 3 years. Why? Because of cash flow problems. And that's just one reason. Half of them. In the marketing category, 64% of the businesses failed because owners not only ignored the importance of properly promoting their business, but ignored the competition as well, which is really a real shame. And then finally, in the management category, 70% of the business failed due to owners not recognizing their own failings and not seeking help or having sufficient relevant business experience. Oh, my internet connection is unstable, so bear with me, please. If there are any issues, let me know. So as a background canvas to the second part of my talk, I want to introduce you to the 3-year golden rule and the Death Valley curve. The 3-year golden rule is a phenomenon which is as old as the hills, that any accountant worth his or her salt will make a budding entrepreneur aware that no matter what business you are setting yourself up in, no matter what business you go into, this phenomenon happens. You're more than likely to make a loss on the first year of trading, break even in the second, and possibly make a profit in the third year. If we could make huge profits in the first year, we wouldn't be wasting our time at university, but we'll be out in the marketplace making a fortune. Now, this so-called phenomenon happens because in year one, the year in which you make a net loss, you don't have a big enough customer base in your niche market to generate sufficient profits to cover your business overheads. In year two, you will possibly break even because you now have a big enough customer base to be able to just about cover your business overheads. In year three, you establish your footprint in your niche market and have a solid customer base that enable you to make profits. Now, in parallel to the 3-year golden rule, we will consider the Death Valley curve. That I've taken from Paul Byrne's book, Entrepreneurship for SMEs, 4th edition, 2016. I will show you the diagram in a moment. And the vertical axis is in pounds and pence. The horizontal axis is the timeline of your business venture, representing the first 3 years of your life. Now, what you're required to do is to just plan and map it out and to see if your business idea survives the Death Valley alive and above all else is profitable. If it doesn't accept the Death Valley curve alive, please stay in bed. So bear with me, I'm just going to go and share my screen. Oh, sorry. Oh dear. Bear with me, sir. I'm just having a slight problem here. Oops. God, I do apologize. I will get there in a second, bear with me. I'm just going to minimize this. Okay, here we go. Right, can you see this? Could somebody please tell me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
sir, we are.
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Right, I do apologize. It stays here. Cash flow in the Death Valley. I'll very quickly read this. It says here, warning, many firms do not survive to come through to the other end of the Death Valley. So you need to plot its course and plan how to navigate it. Just about every firm that runs out of cash, but to do so at the start of your business, which could have been very successful, just because you have not planned for this very predictable challenge, is plain stupid. Now, I didn't say that, the author's saying that. It really, if you ask me, yes, it is plain stupid. Because the Death Valley may not be a problem if you have sufficient capital, your own money or borrowed money. And remember, you can't keep on borrowing, so that you can trade all the time when no cash is coming in. But you need to map out the Death Valley to see what you face, work out its depth, how much cash is needed, and its length. How long will you need the cash? Now, the Death Valley may be deeper and longer than you expect. Indeed, if you get some unexpected orders and sales really take off, the Death Valley could get longer or deeper, or both, because you need to buy and pay for the stock, perhaps hire extra staff, all that before the cash rolling starts to roll in. So here's the Death Valley curve. So you invest a lot of money and you borrow money from a bank. In the first year, this timeline here, as I said, the 3-year golden rule, it takes 3 years before you start to make profits. So if you draw a line here for the first year, it takes time to establish your business. You borrow a lot of money, you get going, you start to build your capital base, your customer base, and there's the end of the second year. So you're going to make a loss in the first year, you probably break even in the second, and start making a profit in the third year. I would like to point out that in the 4th, 5th, and 6th year, if you have a business and you have, say, a workshop, the amount of quantity of goods you can produce will start to level off. You'll either then have to get another workshop, or if you're selling goods, maybe a second shop or a third branch and a fourth branch. This mountain of cash, you need to reinvest when you open your second branch. So from this point onwards, you're in the black here, you're in the red there, you're in the black, you're back in the red, you're back in the black, back in the red, and so on. So this Death Valley curve is what we bear in mind in parallel with the 3-year golden rule. You know, we don't kid ourselves that we're going to make a fortune in the very first year. So I'm going to stop sharing that. I'm going to go to a new share, and I just want to go back to my folder. So I'm going to share screen, and you should be able to see an Excel spreadsheet. Excellent. Okay. Let's do a quick summary so far. The Death Valley curve says, ensure that your business venture is sufficiently capitalized. You should learn to manage your cash flow efficiently. You must control your costs ruthlessly. You must run the business proactively, not reactively. That is, no firefighting. And you've got to have a plan B You've got to have survival strategies in place. In parallel with the death valley curve, we have the 3-year golden rule. Year 1, we're anticipating to make losses. We're trying to build a customer base. We're trying to penetrate into the market and create our own niche market. In year 2, you'll be finding your feet and turning the ship around. In year 3, you'll be making and reinvesting profits, using your profits for organic growth, being innovative to stay ahead of the curve, to maintain an edge over the competition. So bearing these two very important ideas at the very forefront of your mind, you do your projections. So here we are, a fictitious company called XYZ Limited, projected cash flow forecast for the 3 years, year 1, 22, 23, and 24. We invest £100,000. Now, you produce this projected cash flow forecast and you show a trading account, a profit loss account, and a balance sheet. And you present this for the 3 years to a lender, a bank manager, or a business angel. Let me tell you, they haven't got much time to look at your detailed analysis. The first thing they do is they go to the balance sheet. The two sides equal. This candidate can balance their balance sheets. That's good. So the question they ask, how much money? Put your money where your mouth is, as Gary said. So you invested £100,000, and after all that was said and done, at the end of the first year, what did you achieve? Well, I was anticipating losses. I've lost £20,000. The net worth of my business is 80. Where is the 80? Well, some of it is in my fixed assets, some in current assets, but then I owe people for my current liabilities. I only have a working capital of 4,000. And so that number there plus that number there gives me the 80,000. All right. As far as the lender's concerned, the business agent's concerned, he is wondering how good you are, how viable your business idea is. So you've lost £20,000 in year 1. You're going to carry forward that £20,000 loss in year 2. So there's your share capital again. There's your loss brought forward. But this year, you're breaking even. You made a profit of £21,000 as per your profit and loss account. Okay, fair enough. Which means all that you've done in the second year is generate sufficient profits to recover your losses of the first year. So you net your profits against your losses, and you're left with a very small figure of £1,000 on your profit and loss reserves. So there's nothing much to shout about here either. So he says, what have you done in the third year? Well, in the third year, I started off with £100,000. That's the balance brought forward. I've now made a profit of £45,000 in the third year. So yes, we followed the 3-year golden rule. Loss in the first year, break even in the second, and profit in the third year. So that's the profit you've made. So at the end of the third year, you made a profit of 46,000. That number divided by the investment, £100,000, produces a return on capital employed, ROCE, of 46.75, but that's over 3 years. If you divide that by 3, it's produced an average of 16% per annum. By the way, ROCE is the same thing as return on investment. And how does that compare with the opportunity that you've lost? Well, the opportunity that you've lost was to leave the £100,000 in a bank deposit account. And if you had done that in the United Kingdom at this point in time, it would have just earned about 2% per annum. So you've lost the opportunity to earn 2% deposit interest, and I've managed to earn 16%, which is 8 times as much. So therefore, greater the risk, greater the reward. Nil or minimum risk, low reward. But are banks safe? In the 2007-8 financial crisis, the British high street banks were in a meltdown and had to be rescued by the government, there was a run on the banks. And if my bank failed today and I found £100,000 in a deposit account, the government only guarantees £85,000. I will lose 15,000, or £100,000, £160,000 for a joint account with my wife. Then, of course, the other opportunity cost is, say there were 3 people running this business: a managing director, a finance director, and a sales director. Now, the starting average salary for a UK graduate is about £30,000 per annum. So they lost £90,000 per annum, or £270,000 over the 3 years. So the question is, what's the grand idea of going into business? Well, the grand idea of going into business is we create goodwill. We can sell the business as a going concern. If we don't do that, we can go on the alternative investment market and eventually floated on the stock market in a few years' time and become millionaires, which we can't if we went to work for someone. And the other thing is, now, if a lender or a business angel looks at this and says, you know what, these guys have got their heads screwed on, they're being sensible, they don't expect losses, they expect losses in the first year, they're expected to break even in the second year, and they're hoping to make profits in the third year. And then upon the closer analysis of the cash flow forecast, well, he doesn't even have to look at that. He looks at the profit and loss account and he sees that you have invested £60,000 in research and development. Why have you done that? Because I need to stay ahead of the competition. I'm working on my next prototype. I'm investing £20,000 there, and I'm investing a further £40,000 there on my product development and innovation. And the lender becomes very encouraged. The other thing that you've done is you've invested £30,000 of your own money, not by way of a capital loan, into your fixed assets. So I've increased my fixed assets, plant and equipment by 62 to increase productivity per man, and invested 60,000 in research and development. So I've effectively reinvested £90,000. The figure here of £45,000 is after the 60 and the 30. So therefore, in the third year, I'm going great guns. I'm doing really well. And this is what will encourage an investor to lend money. The other thing, the other aspects of your projections is going to be, how well are you managing the cash flow? And he sees that the bank says, okay, if you invest £100,000, we'll help you by giving you an overdraft facility of £25,000. Remember, that's a finance source. So in the first year, you buy your fixed assets. In the first month, you buy fixed assets. You just set up your business and get going. And you're managing your overdraft. You're nearly at the limit. But hey, look here. When you pay the rent, you've exceeded your overdraft limit, which is not looking good. And that's the purpose of this exercise. You've got to make sure you stay within the overdraft limit at all times. In the second year, £14,000, you're down to 11,600, which means you're using less than half of the overdraft facility. So again, you're demonstrating to the lender, look, I am managing my cash flow really well, and I'm paying my bills as and when they fall due. In the third year, you know what? You start with an overdraft of 11,600, and you've got cash at bank. You're in the black. You're in the black. And here you are overdrawn because you were up to £23,600. In this month, you invested £30,000 in new plant and equipment, and the following month you invested £20,000 in R&D, and you had a fair amount of cash there, and then you invested £40,000 in your product development, a total of 60. So not only are you managing your cash flow, but you're generating sufficient profits to ensure your survival in the fourth and the fifth and the sixth year. If you keep making profits at this rate, hopefully you'll do very nicely. So this is what a lender or a business angel will want to look for. And very quickly, and finally, once you've bought your fixed assets, you only depreciate them once a year, and you forget about them. The real dynamics in a set of accounts is the interaction between your current assets and current liabilities. You buy stock, you sell it on credit. When you get the money, you get to put the money in the bank, and then you pay your suppliers and you pay all your other bills. You'd rather have cash at bank, or you'll be overdrawn. At any one point in time, the total of your current assets should be greater than your current liabilities. Otherwise, you'll have a deficiency of working capital. In other words, if I owed somebody £100, I should have £100 in my pocket. 100 divided by 100 is 1. So therefore, the ratio of the current assets to the current liabilities should always be greater than 1. In the first year, we just about have a very meager amount of working capital. In year 2, we have 60,000 over 31, which is twice as much. That looks very nice, very encouraging. In the third year, having made investments, I am doing really well. I've got working capital of 66. So that's how you need to project, what you need to do your projections, but the key is your sales figures here. Your sales of $500,000 there, your sales in the second year of 900,000, and in 24 they are 1275. I have a very important question for you. Where do you generate these numbers from? These numbers are generated from your market research. If your market research is unreliable, this is the whole starting point. If this is wrong, everything else is a nonsense. You've got to be absolutely honest with yourselves when you're generating these numbers. So these accounts are a trading account. Am I trading sufficiently to generate? Sorry, let's go back to 2. A trading account shows, have I generated sufficient amount of gross profit to cover all my overheads? In year 1, no. I'm 20,000 short. In year 2, my P&L, I've generated £200,000 worth of profits. After depreciation, I'm left at 21, which is pretty good. Year 3, I've generated almost £300,000 and made a profit of 45, having spent £90,000 on reinvestment and product development. Now, I've kept it simple now, and I want to stop the share and show you one other cash flow, and stay with me. Oops, sorry. Open with Excel. Right, can you see my screen? Yes, you can.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can.
Okay, this is another set of cash flow statements for a fictitious company for 22, 23, 24. Most of the accounts, tax computations will ignore that. When you do a projected cash flow forecast, your lender or the business angel is not a mind reader. You need to hold their hand and talk them through. So if you say turnover, C note 1, 60,000, he or she should be able to go to the notes and say, intended to commence trading as from January 22, sales will increase by 5% on the previous month. Okay. So what is warranty income? We will sell a no-cobble guarantee equal to 2% selling prices at the time of sale, and so on. So what you have to do is guide your reader line by line. £100,000 ordinary share investment. So what's number 4? Group members will raise the initial startup capital by issuing $25,000 each. And note number 5 says, we need a bank loan of £50,000 to part finance the purchase of fixed assets as well as an overdraft facility of £80,000 to meet our working capital needs. The bank will thus match our investment on one-to-one basis. So £100,000 and so on and so forth. So my money, the bank's money, plus the bank overdraft here. And you see straight away from my cash flow, I am bringing reducing my overdraft in leaps and bounds. I've got cash at bank at the end of the second year. At the beginning of the second year, and towards the end, I've got to £77,000, £74,000. I'm overdrawn from 76 to 36. Why? Because I'm investing £100,000 in research and development, another 100,000 there, 200,000. And I've got cash at bank. So I'm managing my cash flow very well. Again, I've got almost £200,000. I'm investing 250. And I've got cash at bank. So cash flow, I have mastered my cash flow. What about the 3-year golden rule? Well, here we go. In the first year, I invested $100,000. I lost 17,000 and I was worth 82. But the bank gave me long-term finance, and with the help of my current liabilities, I was able to trade on. But my net worth is only 82. In the second year, I turned the ship around, I made a profit, and I've just about recovered my investment. In year 3, I made a profit of 60,000, and I made 50,000 over the 3 years, which gives me about 17% per annum return on average. In each of the 3 years, I have reduced my bank loans to 26, and gradually I'll pay them off. Now, what I'd like to point out is that under the International Financial Reporting Standards, we do not have a trading account, profit and loss account, and a balance sheet anymore. It's all being changed. It's now called the trading account, and the profit and loss account has been amalgamated, and it's called the Statement of Comprehensive Income. So it's the same turnover. This is your trading account, and then you have your overheads, admin, selling, finance, and depreciation. Now, remember, in your cash flow, you need to give the detail of what is it, what constitutes your administration cost, selling, finance, and that's the first year. And the second year is admin, selling and distribution, and finance. So instead of the balance sheet nowadays, again on the IFR, International Financial Reporting Standards, a balance sheet is now called a statement of financial position, as I'm sure you probably know. The difference between this format of accounts and the one that I was showing you earlier is this. On the one side, they have fixed assets, which they call the non-current assets, and the current assets, and that's the total of the balance sheet. And on the other side, what we're showing is those assets are funded by us, the bank, and current liabilities, and we come to the same number. The disadvantage here is that this balance sheet doesn't show you what the working capital is, whereas under the format that I showed you, you know what your working capital is. And working capital is one of the key numbers, a key accounting ratio. So I'm going to stop my share, and I'm back again. So if I may just carry on for a moment, I've talked to you about the 3-year golden rule and the Death Valley curve. So I want to rephrase this or emphasize this again, that the numbers that you input in your projected cash flow forecasts and projected accounts will be a reflection of your integrity, in that you are being absolutely honest with yourself and not kidding yourself. If you kid yourself, you're really setting yourself up to fail. And you're going to map this out over the 3 years and say, hey, is this really going to work? Between you and me, the laptop and the Excel spreadsheet, is this really going to work? So don't input numbers that you would like to see. You've got to do your market research. You've got to do your legwork. And the marketplace is very turbulent. It changes all the time. You need to have a plan B, a plan C, and you have to be very, very nimble. So your marketing research must reflect the ground reality that you have conducted for your product or service in ascertaining the demand for it, and in turn, your prediction of realistic sales or turnover. If you get this wrong, no amount of planning in Excel spreadsheets is going to prevent your venture from failing. So in conclusion, and going forward, what consequences do budding entrepreneurs face after the COVID pandemic is over? Well, if you ask me, I would honestly say, I don't know. More mutations on the horizon, more vaccines to combat them, efficacy of these vaccines. As it is, the banks are very worried about non-performing loans on account of the pandemic, which are fast turning into toxic debt. They're very reluctant to offer financial support, new loans or bank overdrafts to new business starts at the moment. The UK government and most Western economies have paid salaries and wages via the furlough scheme, but that cannot go on forever, indefinitely. And at the end of the day, we have finite resources, and we cannot go on printing money as if it were confetti. And by the way, the COVID-19 is a black swan event, which means a black swan event is an unpredictable event that is beyond what is normally expected of a situation, but has potentially severe consequences. Now, black swan events are characterized by they're extremely rare. They have a severe impact, and the widespread insistence, they were obvious in hindsight. This was partially true of the UK. A government audit had warned months in advance of the pandemic that the country was not ready to deal with a pandemic of this nature. The government said thank you to the auditors and then very carefully filed away the report and forgot about it. And then when the pandemic did hit us, we were caught unaware and unprepared. Were other countries ready? You might like to reflect on that. Were we complacent? Perhaps we were. But then hindsight is a wonderful thing. We're always wiser after the event. The financial crisis of 2007 and 8 was also another black swan event, and that was brought about by high risk and high return banking models, and had been predicted by a few whose words had fallen on deaf ears. So haven't we been here before? And will we learn from our past experiences? Thank you for listening. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for bringing in your expertise and experience before us. It's been indeed a pleasure listening to your profound knowledge and thoughts. We definitely have some questions from our participants. And the first question, yes, sir?
One minute. Amrit, this is Dinesh. Hi.
Namaskar.
Namaste. And namaste to Neelam ji also.
Sure. She's watching at the moment.
Yeah, I saw her. Yeah. Okay, Baisakhi, go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dinesh ji. I do look very different from my husband, I have to say.
Okay, and the first question is from our coordinator research, Maithili P. Rao, Dr. Maithili P. Rao, and ma'am asks, do the rules of investment change with the product or the service and the market?
Yes, the short answer is yes. The short answer is you have to be, as I mentioned in my talk, you have to be very, very agile and on your feet and thinking on your feet. The competition is very, very intense. no matter what product or service you're selling, your next product, your next prototype should be ready to launch. I'll give you one example. HTC. HTC is a phone company. If you go to their website, they were the first to do this. They were the first to do that. They were the first, and you'll find it wasn't Apple. In fact, HTC was the first company that was going to launch the smartphone. And they had put their smartphones on 2 containers, and they were a week away from New York. And they were going to launch this smartphone in New York with a big bang. And guess what happened? Steve Jobs launched his iPhone, and they lost out. It was that close. Now, they said their products, their phone has a shelf life of just 9 months. I mean, that's just one example. The moment you bring something on the market and the competition is watching you like a hawk, they'll undercut you on price and quality. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Moving on to the next question. This is from one of our participants who says, most startups in India are burning cash, but are being supported by venture capital. Is the logic sound? Paytm, which had an IPO recently and valuation is down by 50%, for example, he says.
Well, this is what's happening in Britain. Companies that were doing very well, very successful, had been trading for years, had very good cash reserves, and then COVID hit us. The rate of cash burn was extremely high. Why? Because there was no income coming in. Businesses we went into lockdown, everything closed. The banks were not prepared to lend money, so the government stepped in and said, okay, we'll pay your wages. So we've had one lockdown, we've come out of it, we've gone back in it again. I'll give you an example. I had a business man telling me the other week that they used up all their cash reserves during the pandemic of the last year and a half. And now that they've opened up again, they've got no cash left for stock. And their banks have said, sorry, not lending any money. They had to close their business. People will not throw money at you, especially when they cannot see return on capital employed. So the short answer is no. No, not a good idea at the moment. Everything's on ice at the moment. Everything. Next question.
Yes, moving on to the next question. Sir, this is again from another participant of ours. He says, is operating profit more important or growth rate in revenue for a startup? And is there something I trade off between them?
No. If you noticed in any of I did not mention turnover in any of my projections. People think, oh, in the last example I showed you of my projections, the turnover was, I don't know, 1.5 or 2 million. I did not even mention it. You can have a company like, dare I say, Air India. You can have a turnover of millions, but what's your net profit? 0. You got negative returns. So, do I invest £100,000 of my money in a restaurant or a light engineering company or something else? I am looking at the return on every single pound. I don't care what the business is. I don't care what the turnover is. I'd rather invest in a small shop, which gives me net profits, rather than investing millions in a big business, which is giving me a net loss of millions every year. That would be irrational. We must get away from this thinking of fantastic turnover, and fantastic gross profit. Yes, but what's your net return? Having recovered your depreciation.
Thank you, sir. There is a question from our student Shivani Jaiswal. She asks how the market will welcome India's independent cell phone.
You're asking the wrong guy, but all I can tell you is I've got to be very careful what I say here. Ever since Modi ji became a prime minister, he's put India on the map. Gary said Bangalore is about to overtake London for attracting venture capital. In my previous conference talk, I was talking about foreign direct investment in India. India is going places. She is going places in the next 5-6 years. I think we'll do phenomenally well in every aspect. And we're not short of talent. I mean, look at Jain University. You've got all these clever people there. And our management institutes are also fantastic. I mean, they produce the brightest of the bright, and sadly, they go to the States and they run all the top 10 American companies. And if you look at Britain, I mean, again, Gary mentioned this, Rishi Sunak went to private schools. He had a very good education. He's become the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And then we have Priti Patel as our Home Secretary. You know, the two most key powerful positions in government. So you don't mess with Indians.
Right, sir. So I have a question from Dr. Muhammad Shehzad Hanif, who says, sir, every business in the post-pandemic era is working to go online. Will you please advise how to plan that? And should it be universal to all startups?
No, we just don't know. We don't know. What I do know is online teaching is not working at universities. Last year, almost 1/3 of our students wanted to quit their courses because they did not like being educated online. I don't know what your experience is. I certainly don't enjoy teaching online because I just feel I'm talking to a brick wall. I've got, what, 526 participants. You know, I can't gauge the body language to see what level of interest they have in me, whether they're sitting there yawning or whether they're even in the room. So some businesses, yes, you can do online. Consultancy work, yes, you can. If you're selling merchandise, you know, goods and services or whatever that you make, you have to have a presence. All right, we don't need to have a bricks and mortar presence in the high street now, because you can order everything from Amazon. And if you don't like it, you can send it back, which is great. You know, shopping malls may have a limited life. I don't know, but it's good. I'm sure you enjoy when you go shopping for a new sari. You want to go to a shopping mall and try it and look at 50 other. It's not the same experience online. But then that's my personal point of view. I could be completely wrong. I mean, I certainly don't go out to bookshops anymore. I buy them online. It saves me driving 18 miles into Cardiff, parking my car, walking through the rain into a shopping mall, finding a bookshop, and then being told, oh, it's not in stock. So what's the point? And then 18-mile round trip back. It's just a complete and utter waste of time. So online business will work, pandemic or no pandemic, yes. Things are going to change. Things are going to change.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. The next question from one of our participants is, the net worth of many companies has grown tremendously. Was Black Swan event of COVID a boon or a bane?
It's a wake-up call. Don't be complacent. You can trade for 20, 30, 40 years. And I can tell you this, you're only as good as your last month. If your bank has to return your checks or fails to pay your standing orders because there were insufficient funds in your accounts, they'll call you in and say, hey, we've given you an overdraft. If you don't behave or manage this properly, we're going to call in the overdraft, and they can. This is why overdrafts are a current liability, not a long-term liability. You know, so never, ever, ever be complacent. People can put you out of business in next to no time. Always watch the competition. Next question.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So thank you very much, sir, for enriching our prospects of entrepreneurship, business, and management. This address certainly benefited us with your breadth of knowledge and depth of expertise. Giving us your time really helped in making this summit fruitful to our participants. Our special thanks goes to our director, Dr. Dinesh Neelkant, who has been instrumental in making this session worthwhile. Thank you once again.
Thank you all. Thank you for having me, and Jai Hind.
Thank you so
Namaskar.
much, sir. Thank you so much.
Over to Dr. Shiva.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. As we have come to the end of today's session for our 9-day International Entrepreneurship Summit, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our Chancellor, Dr. Chinraj Roychand, Pro-Chancellor, Dr. N. Sundarajan, Vice-Chancellor, Dr. Raj Singh, Pro-Vice-Chancellor, Dr. Ishwaran Iyer, Registrar, Dr. N.V.H. Krishnan, Director, Academic Planning, Professor Sridhar Murthy, and the entire family of Jain deemed to be University for developing an ecosystem that has transformed the society and contributed significantly towards its betterment. I thank our esteemed director, Dr. Dinesh Neelkant, Center for Management Studies, Jain deemed to be University, for his overwhelming support and golden words of advices in our endeavors, and for inspiring us with his mentorship and guidance. I'm extremely thankful to our keynote speakers, Mr. Gary Stewart and Professor Amrit Bhardawaja, for giving us enriching insights about the concept of entrepreneurship in current day business world. I would also like to thank all our HODs, our coordinators from the bottom of my heart for their ever extending hands of support, which have been instrumental in the success of this event. The extremely talented faculty members for their participation, the facility manager and the non-teaching staff of CMS, whose contributions have played a significant role in the success of this event. We thank Office of Communications for their immense support. Our special thanks goes to Summit advisors, Dr. Roger Samuel Smith, Christopher H. Brown, Distinguished Professor at University of Pennsylvania, USA, who has been instrumental in making today's event worthwhile, along with Dr. John Lipinski, Professor and Co-Director of the Excel Center for Entrepreneurial Excellence, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, USA, and Mr. Manoranjan Sharma, Chief Economist, Infomerics Ratings, India. At the very end, I would also like to thank all our wonderful participants whose engagement and active participation fulfilled the purpose of this event and made this successful. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining us and giving a pleasant start to this event. I request all participants to stay with us for all upcoming 5 days for lots more to explore and learn from our eminent speakers. Tomorrow, we are going to begin with the incubation of Jain deemed to be University from 6 to 7 p.m., followed by a session from our keynote speaker, Michael Goldberg, alumnus Wharton School, Johns Hopkins University, and Princeton University, Executive Director, VO Institute for Entrepreneurship, Case Western Reserve University, USA, speaking on the topic Beyond Silicon Valley, Growing Entrepreneurship in Transitioning Economies, from 7 to 8 p.m., followed by the next speaker, Dr. Robert D. Hisrich, Faculty Innovation Institute I4 and Bridgestone Chair of International Marketing, Kent State University, USA, delivering his talk on the topic Entrepreneurship Beyond Borders from 8 to 9 p.m. Requesting all participants to stay tuned throughout, as it's mandatory to fill feedback form for all sessions to receive certificate. Tomorrow, we are going to begin sharp at 6 p.m. IST, requesting all of you to log in 15 minutes prior to the time. Hope to see you all tomorrow at 5:45 p.m. sharp. Have a great time. Thank you. Namaste.